everyone. Thank you for purchasing the Annie Pack pattern. Welcome to the sew along. In this sew along, I will show you how to make this fun and versatile fanny pack, but I don't want to call it a fanny pack, it's the Annie Pack. So have fun, be creative, and I can't wait to see all of your wonderful designs. Don't forget to tag me on social media at Legionero. You should have 5 pattern pieces with your Annie Pack pattern. I'm using a fat quarter that I purchased from Walmart as my main fabric. For my lining, I'm using a black cotton cloth. I'm also using a fusible fleece as well as a woven interfacing. Let's start by cutting out pattern piece number 1, which is your front bottom, and I'm cutting 1 of fabric. I'm just placing my pattern weights down, and now I'm going to cut around. Now let's cut out pattern piece number 2, which is your front top, and I'm cutting out 1 of fabric. Next, we're cutting out pattern piece number 5, which is our back piece, and we are cutting out 1 of fabric. Next, we're cutting out pattern piece number 3, which is our strap connector, and we're cutting out 1 of fabric on the fold. Last but not least, we're cutting out piece number 4, which is our connectors, and we're cutting 2 of fabric. Now let's cut out our lining pieces. I'm cutting out pattern piece number 1, which is our front bottom, and I'm cutting 1 of lining. Now we're cutting out piece number 2, our front top, and we're cutting 1 of lining. Now we're cutting out pattern piece number 5, which is our back piece, and we're actually going to cut out 3 pieces for the lining. For pattern piece number 1, I'm cutting 1 of fusible fleece. For pattern piece number 2, I'm cutting 1 of fusible fleece. And for pattern piece number 5, I'm cutting 1 of fusible fleece. For pattern piece number 5, I'm also cutting out 2 of woven interfacing. For pattern piece number 3, I'm cutting out 1 of woven interfacing on the fold. And last but not least, for pattern piece number 4, I'm cutting 2 of woven interfacing. So let's go over all of the pattern pieces that you're going to need so we can get started. You're going to need piece number 1, where you cut 1 of fabric, 1 of lining, and 1 of fusible fleece. Pattern piece number 2, you cut 1 of fabric, 1 of lining, and 1 of fusible fleece. Pattern piece number 3, you're going to cut 1 of fabric and 1 of woven interfacing. Pattern piece number 4, you cut 2 of fabric and 2 of woven interfacing. And pattern piece number 5, you're cutting 1 of fabric, 3 of lining, 1 of fusible fleece, and 2 of woven interfacing. So let's get started. I'm going to start with pattern piece number 1, and I'm just going to add the fusible fleece to the main piece. So I'm turning it over to the wrong side, and I'm fusing the bumpy side. Make sure that you have the bumpy side facing down. And then I'm going to take my pressing cloth, which is just a piece of organza that's been serged, and I'm going to press. I like to wait a few seconds just to let it cool down a little bit, but your fusible fleece is now attached. And I didn't do any woven interfacing for the lining piece, just because I didn't want it to be super bulky, but you can if you like. So now we're going to fuse the fusible fleece to pattern piece number 2, the main piece of pattern piece number 2. And again, just like the other side, you turn it with the wrong side facing up. Take your fusible fleece with the bumpy side facing down. Add your pressing cloth, and then you iron it just like you did the other piece. Now I'm going to work with pattern piece number 5, which is my back piece and my lining pieces. I'm going to fuse the fusible fleece to the back piece first, and then I'm going to fuse the woven interfacing to my 2 lining pieces. So now I'm going to add the woven interfacing to pattern piece number 3, and I'm going to fuse it together just like I did the other pieces, with the wrong side facing up and the bumpy side of the interfacing facing down. Finally, the 2 connector pieces, I'm fusing the woven interfacing just like I did with the strap connector pieces, and the lining pieces. Now that we have all of our interfacing done, let's take all of our pieces to the table and we'll start to assemble our bag. So grab pattern piece number 1, pattern piece number 2, and your zipper, and make sure you have some binder clips. And I'm actually going to work with pattern piece number 2 first, with the main piece, the lining, and the zipper. So I'm going to take the main piece and I am going to place it facing up, and I'm going to take the zipper and I'm going to place it with the zipper pull facing down. And I'm going to use a clip just to hold it in place. And now I'm going to take my lining piece and place it on top of the zipper. And I'm just going to clip all of those pieces together, sandwiching the zipper in between. And I'm just making sure everything is straight. All right, you're just going to take it and then you're going to sew down the top edge. Make sure that you switch to your zipper foot. All right, take your pattern pieces. Don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and at the end, and then sew down the edge. Cut any loose threads. And now what you're going to do, you're going to top stitch. So you're going to open up your pattern pieces, place them with wrong sides facing so that the zipper is now facing up, and you're going to top stitch just to make it look neat and clean. Cut your loose threads, and then we can head back to the table to attach pattern piece number 1 and the lining to the zipper. So now let's take our pattern pieces for piece number 1, and we're going to attach them to the other side of the zipper. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to place the main piece. I'm going to place the zipper again with the zipper pull facing down on the main piece. And again, use a binder clip just to hold it in place. And then I'm going to take the lining piece and I'm going to place it on top of the zipper, sandwiching the zipper in between. And then I'll clip down the wrist. So the 2 lining pieces are facing and the 2 main pieces are facing. Once you have everything clipped together, you can take it to the sewing machine and sew down that top edge. Don't forget to switch back to your zipper foot. And now we're going to sew Don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and at the end. Cut all of your loose threads. And now you're going to open it up and you're going to top stitch just like you did the top part. Now let's finish assembling our front piece. So now that we have our front piece, we're going to take piece number 5, which is one piece of the lining, flip over our front piece, and we're going to place the lining on top so that all lining pieces are right sides facing. You're going to clip and sew, baste each edge. When you baste, don't forget to change your machine to the longest stitch length. And you're just going to baste down both sides. You don't have to baste all the way down both sides, but just enough to hold the pieces together in place. Now that our front piece is assembled, we're going to now work with our strap connectors and our connectors. So what we're going to do now, we're going to press our strap connector in half diagonally, just so we can get a crease down the middle, because we're going to cut this into 2 pieces. So we're going to fold it in half diagonally, and then we're going to press. Mine is a little off, but that's okay. All right, so now we have this crease down the middle. So now that we have it pressed in place, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut off that excess there that's hanging off the edge. All right, so now we need to open this up. And because I have the crease, I don't really need the marking pen and ruler, but I'm going to do it just to show you for the purposes of the video. So I'm just taking the ruler and the marking pen, and I'm just going to mark a line down that crease so I'll know where I need to cut. So you'll especially need it if you're working with vinyl or cork or a fabric that you can't press. So now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut down that crease and cut it into 2 pieces. So now working with one piece, I'm just going to fold over that top edge about 1/4 of an inch. And you can press this. I'm just going to use some binder clips to hold it in place. But you're going to either press it or pin it or clip it. And you're going to sew down that edge. And you're going to do the same thing to the other piece. Now that you have both pieces sewn down that top edge, I'm just going to take the scissors and I'm going to cut off that excess at the end just to clean it up a little bit. Now we're going to set these two pieces aside and going to work with the two connector pieces. So with our two connector pieces, I'm just going to work with one and I'm going to fold it in half down the long edge. And I'm going to press it so we will have a crease in the middle, just like we did the strap connector piece. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the ends of the pieces and fold them towards that middle crease. And I'm going to press because we are going to sew down those long edges to secure the strap, the connector in place. All right, now we're going to sew down both long edges. Now that we got our two pieces sewn together, we're going to take our square rings and we're going to place the square rings in the middle of the connector piece. And I'm just going to sew down that edge. I'm going to take a binder clip and clip it in place. Going to do the same thing with the other piece. Take them to the sewing machine and sew it to secure it. Now let's sew this in place and I'm going to back stitch a couple of times too, just to make sure it stays in place. All right, and do the same thing to the other piece. So now working with our connector pieces and our strap connector pieces, I'm going to work with one side first. So you're going to take the strap connector piece and you're going to fold it in half. Then you're going to take the connector piece with the square ring and place it on the inside of the strap connector piece. Right? Once you get it on the inside, you can clip it using the binder clip. And then you're going to sew across the top edge just to secure it in place. Do the same thing with the other piece. Now we're just going to sew across the top edge. Make sure you backstitch a couple of times and sew over it a couple of times just to make sure it's secure and that it stays in place and that it will hold up. Now that we have our strap connectors and connectors with our square rings sewn together, we're going to take pattern piece number 5, our back piece, and we're going to place them in the center. Now we're going to take our binder clips and we're going to clip them in place. And then we'll take them to the sewing machine and baste those together. Before we do that, I want to show you a version that I made where I put the strap connectors towards the bottom, which is going to be what's in your pattern instructions. So I just measured up a 1/2 inch from the bottom on there, but for this one, I'm putting the strap connectors in the middle just to change it up a little bit, just to see how it works. I'm changing the stitch length to the longest stitch, and I'm just going to baste both sides together. Of the Annie pack, and in the previous clip you saw that my strap connectors were a little wonky, so I wanted to make sure I did these correctly. So I have these in the middle instead of more towards the bottom like you'll see in the written instructions. So what I did, I measured up 1.5 inches, and that's where I decided to place the strap connectors to make sure that when I do use the webbing and connect my strap, that everything will be in the center. So I measured up 1.5 inches. Now that we have our front piece and our back piece done, we're going to take our lining pieces and going to set the back piece aside, and I'm going to work with the front piece, the lining, and the zipper. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to place my zipper with the zipper tape facing down on the front piece. I'm also making sure that both my zipper pulls are going in the same direction. So I'm going to use a binder clip, clip it in place. I'm going to place the lining on top of the zipper. I'm going to clip that in place. I'm going to clip down the remainder of the top edge. I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and sew down the top edge. So let's sew down this top edge, back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Cut your loose threads, and now you're going to open it up and you're going to place it with the wrong sides facing, and the zipper pull is now facing up, and you're going to top stitch down the top edge. Now that our front piece and the lining are attached to the zipper, We're now going to take our back piece, and you want to make sure that the square rings are facing upward towards the top. And you're going to place it on top of the zipper, and make sure your zipper pull is facing the right side of your fabric. Pin in place. And then you'll flip it over and you'll add the lining with right sides together. And then you'll clip the rest of the top. Sandwiching the zipper in between. Take it to the sewing machine and sew down that edge. Using your zipper foot, sew down the top edge, back stitching at the beginning and at the end. Next, you open it up and then you top stitch to make it look neat and clean. Now that we have both sides attached to our zipper, now you open up your zipper about halfway. Then you take your two main pieces and you place them with right side spacing. And your lining pieces, you place them with right side spacing. And I like to clip starting at the zipper first. Make sure that your zipper tape is going facing towards the lining. And I clip that area first. And then you clip the rest of the pouch all the way around, and you're going to leave an opening 3 or 4 inches in the bottom of the lining. Now that you have it clipped all the way around, you're going to sew around. Make sure you leave your opening in the bottom. Right, now I'm going to sew around starting at the bottom of the lining. And I'm starting at my first binder clip, making sure that when I sew around, I don't sew past the last binder clip so that I can leave my opening in the lining. And each time you get to a corner and pivot, make sure you backstitch at that corner. And also make sure you backstitch at bulky sides and corners as well. Right, so I have my opening at the bottom. Now I'm going to clip the corners and I'm going to clip off some of the bulkiness. When you clip the corners, make sure you don't clip through the stitching. Now I'm just going to use the opening in the lining to turn the bag to the right side. And I usually unzip my zipper more just to make this process easier for me. Now you just need to fold in the seam allowance for the opening that you left in the lining. Just take it to the sewing machine and edge stitch. Now we're going to place our lining on the inside of our bag. And just make sure you push it down in there really good. You can give it a press if you need to, if you're using cotton cloth like me. And the pouch is finished. Now let's work on the strap. So working with one end of your strap and the square strap connector, you're going to place it through one side, then move the separator piece, and then place it through the other side of the separator piece. I hope that made sense. So I'm going to try to demonstrate it for you here again. Okay. And then you should be able to pull it through. Right. Then you're going to fold it over and you're going to sew that piece together to secure it. Now that we have that place sewn together and secured, we're going to place it with the wrong side facing up, and we're going to take the free end and through the left side of the anti-pack, I'm going to pull the free end through. And again, my wrong side is facing up. So I'm taking the free end and sticking it through the strap connector, just like I did previously. Right? If I can get it through there. Now, I think I got it. And pull it through. On a quick tip, don't forget to burn the edges of your webbing. I didn't do it because I couldn't find a lighter anywhere. All right. That will keep it from fraying. All right, so I have it pulled through. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my swivel clasp, and I know you cannot see that. I apologize. There we go. All right. Take your swivel clasp, put the webbing through it, fold it over. And you're going to sew to secure that in place. Once you have it sewn and secured in place, you just take it, your swivel clasp, and clip it to the square ring, and you are all done with your anti-pack. And you're all done. Don't forget to tag me on social media at LegionnairOB, or you could use the hashtag LegionnairOB patterns. And if you haven't already, download the Erin pouch. That is my first pattern, which is a free PDF pattern. The video is also here on YouTube. I'll link it in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and thank you for purchasing the pattern.